What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Business of Strength podcast. We have an awesome guest here, legendary basketball performance coach, Mike Atkinson. Brother, thanks so much for being on the pod.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, we talked off air a little bit. I think what's really cool is just like your story and how you got here. I mean, obviously you guys seeing this, we're at the summit here. This is a really popular spot just for a lot of awesome players that come in and, the work that you do with Chris. But I think people see this, but they don't realize like how you actually got here. And then I think also just calling a spade, I mean, we said it before, people see some of the stuff that you're doing on social media and they might say like, dude, that shit's garbage. I don't understand that. And it's like, I know because I was in the space, I did it. But I think bringing to light like your ideology and us talking off air is going to be super cool. So you want to just give us a little background just in terms of like how it actually got started as a player, and then, we'll roll from there.
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, basketball has been in my blood. I was like, my first word was ball. So like, I think I was set up to do something with sports. 100%. Yeah, my whole family was athletic, but mostly on like the swimming side and like tennis side. So basketball has been like kind of a spiritual journey for myself.
For sure.
I was fundamentally brought up in a great high school program in Reno, Nevada called Galena High School.
Okay.
We played a nationally ranked schedule, did a bunch of things like that on a high level. The thing that brought me into like coaching and training was I had good basketball fundamentals in college and high school, but when I went into a professional level, I was noticing my training, my athletic ability, I wasn't reaching my full potential.
Yeah.
So I started working with some really good strength coaches at the time, and I started using their like movement stuff that they were teaching me, and I started applying that to basketball, and that kind of gave me my core philosophy. And what was unique about it was this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like sports-specific basketball.
Right, which was like not even in
the consciousness. Like I'd walk in a training room and I saw a foam roller at that time, and I had to ask someone, what is that thing?
Right.
So that tells you where we were.
Of course.
Now we all use a foam roller and then we debate the foam roller.
Yep.
So those things have all changed. But what I started applying was the movement skills to someone that was always told he was unathletic as a player.
Yeah.
I was just tough and I could like use my brains, they said. But I started moving into the ability to guard multiple positions as a pro by just using these fundamental basketball skills on top of a movement profile.
Yeah.
I became more explosive, and at that same point, I got certified. So I knew I wasn't going to play forever, and I knew I wanted to differentiate myself from other players. I didn't want to coach AAU, which was the big thing to do after you played.
Right.
Now it's training.
Yep.
So like that's kind of changed. I had a mentor named Aubrey McCrary, who's an NBA player development coach. He's 62 plus or something right now, and he just got signed with the Orlando Magic to go back and be a player development coach. So he's one of my mentors. So I was using his player development style and then kind of mixing in the strength and conditioning. And we got this like unique blend that we started working with for myself and other athletes. My first NBA pre-draft client was in 2010.
Okay.
And I collaborated with Aubrey with him in Reno, Nevada. His name was Magnum Roll. And then we also had Luke Babbitt at the time.
Yeah, Luke Babbitt.
Who went to my high school as well and won a state title.
Cool.
So that's kind of how like the philosophy started. It's a really organic, kind of needs-based philosophy for the time and space, and then also just taking everything I lacked as a player. They would have pushed me to that Division I level out of high school. I was 17 when I graduated.
Okay.
I could barely dunk, and then the next year I'm putting my elbow on the rim. So I started thinking, hey, if we can push development 6 months, a year for younger athletes as well as pros, they're going to get more opportunities.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's kind of like what drove me into these philosophies. I really had to learn the fundamental strength side though from mentors and other athletes and other experiences to kind of balance out the basketball.
Yeah, and like the thing that's unique too is the fact that like you actually played. So you're like in that mindset, and then you could talk about your pro journey a little bit, but it's like almost having the foresight of seeing like, oh, this is actually what's really needed. Because back then, we talked off, it was like Joe DeFranco and like these like lift weights, train like a football player.
Yeah.
But using your reference point as like a pro player, how did you use that? How did that shape then your journey to be able to like coach basketball players and like at the highest level? Because it's like if you're having a super high level pro come in, right, and it's like, who the heck is this dude?
Right.
So like to walk us through like your pro journey a little bit, and just like to understand the struggles of like what that what
and then how to like the relation how that relationship ties in with the basketball player.
That's right, exactly.
So I think one of the things you'll notice about basketball players is they can smell a basketball player a mile away. Like you
yeah.
either walk like one or you move like one naturally. I grew up in the same environments as most of these guys as far as basketball-wise.
Yep.
You know, we go to the same tournaments, we've been recruited, we play at the same level. So like my journey going to like the pro level was, I was doing the dynamic warm-up in the IBL. And across the court, there'd be former NBA guys who are still trying to stay in shape, playing the G League, overseas. And a few of the ones that had NBA experience were doing dynamic warm-ups at the time. And there wasn't social media everywhere to know that that's what NBA teams are doing inside the buildings.
Yep.
And so I was like, all right. So
and this is 2010 or 2011?
This is 2006, 7.
Shit.
So
okay, yeah.
I played on the Washington Generals after college.
That's right.
Against the Harlem Globetrotters for a full year. Played like 180 games. Played all over the world.
Yep.
While I was on tour with that, I was writing my business plan. Okay. Because I was like, I can't be a Washington General for more than a year. That'd be crazy.
Right.
But that also reminds me that what I was doing on the road was kind of training me for my job in the future.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because I was learning how to travel.
Yep.
I was learning how to take care of my body on a tour, more like a rock tour circus than a pro environment. But we did workouts in the back in arenas. You know, we had to keep ourselves busy while the show was being put on in the first couple hours while the fans were getting in, and we do stuff in the background. So I was writing my business plan on the bus, playing in the IBL after that season, got certified as a personal trainer, just a basic ACE certification just to get some credentials behind my name and educate myself on the body.
And there was really no like big time certification.
Yeah, I think CSCS was just a little bit out of my wheelhouse at the time because I didn't have the science phys background. I was a business major and mostly a basketball major, to be honest. So I think my practical experience in athletic training rooms and around the weight room in college gave me a little bit of baseline on injuries, but not much. So most of that came later.
And just being like in the hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Like just like, hey, like off their long flight, what should I eat? How do I recover? What do I do? It's like stop eating candy and going out.
And I had to learn about binge drinking myself and all these things that were detrimental to my career, reason why I didn't reach my full potential, and the reason why I have wisdom now to help people, you know, some of our own experiences.
Well, because even though, like, you work with pros, but you work with high school kids too. And like these high school kids know nothing because they just see these pros and they're like, oh, that's what he does. Maybe I have to go do that. So it's like your ability to guide those guys, you know, as they go through that journey, I think is important.
Yeah, it's relatable as far as like we feel what they feel.
I've been there.
Yeah, you played as well. And it's like, when you can, like we didn't strengthen our adductors, we didn't stretch our hip flexors. Those were all muscles that were always tight on me and weak on me, and I was always trying to figure it out. So just giving that small piece to an athlete, knowing that, hey, you probably need that, because I felt that way too.
100%.
Then you can start identifying with it.
What point were you like, all right, I can't play pro, and then you made your transition to being a strength coach a little bit, and you said you were writing your business plan, so it's like, how did that kind of transition a little bit?
So I went to a small college, so I knew it was going to be an uphill battle to play professionally for a long time. The IBL was, the Globetrotter Tour was very unsatisfying from a competitive experience. There would be parts of the show where you're competing, so I felt like my skills were getting at a higher level that whole year. They got so much better. You're with the ball, you're playing against the Globetrotters, the cards are stacked against you. In the IBL, they put me back to my natural position as a point guard. I always kind of played the point forward. Averaged a triple-double in the IBL.
Nice.
Like, killed it. That was when I was training with my mentor and one of my colleagues, Rob Knatzer, in Reno. So that's who I worked with for 7 years before I got the Knicks job.
Got it.
So do the triple-double thing in the IBL. Reno's going to get a D-League team, all right? And so I try out for the D-League. I'm playing in my prime now. And I try out for the D-League team. They invite 2 guys from the University of Nevada to training camp over me. You know, so they want the college names, not the local high school kid. And I told myself that I'd offers after the IBL season because it was good, but it was just like $2,000. You know, some country with a lot of Z's and Y's. And I was,
no offense.
No, there's no Z's and Y's. So I took that and I was like, all right, let's run with the training. I'm onto something unique here with Aubrey and myself and Rob. And at that time, I was using the Kaiser equipment for the first time. I was really doing some sport-specific stuff with myself, movement-wise with the resistance and learning about power. And so I was excited about my future as a coach and stayed in Reno, Nevada and just started personal training. And I told them yesterday as well, like I started with 4-year-old development class for like my friends' little kids and a 75-year-old woman, you know, or stroke victims and things like that. And it wasn't about basketball. It was about me learning fundamentals of strength and conditioning and post-rehab and working in that demographic. And that's what I really had to apply myself in. You know?
And I mean, like we even talked before, it's like if you're in this realm, you're not just going to work with one singular sport initially. It's like you have to, because you have no reference point. It's just like, all right, if you can train a 4-year-old, a 75-year-old, and then you have a big-time person come in, it's like, well, you built interpersonal skills with these people, and now you can kind of translate that over. Because training's training. Obviously, you're not going to have grandma do sport-specific exercises, but it's just like your ability to communicate, I think, is
absolutely,
super important.
and create a training program that's safe, fun, and engaging, and they're getting results. And they feel good when they leave your gym. They feel good coming.
100%.
They want to do all those things.
So you're there, then you make your way a little bit.
Yep.
You know, before Chris, it's like, how'd you get in? I know you're with the Westchester Knicks, but how'd that progress from Reno to the East Coast?
Yeah, so the best part about that little story about me not making the Reno Bighorns was 2 years later, Eric Musselman became the head coach of the Reno Bighorns.
Oh, okay.
And the first day, Aubrey brought me to the gym. Aubrey, Phil Handy were both volunteering for Coach Musselman at the time, because there was only one paid assistant in the D. Only one paid assistant at that time, and that assistant probably made more than all the players. The players made no money. It was a real low budget. So Aubrey's like, hey, you know, why don't you come in and warm up the guys one day? I talked to Muss. So my first meeting with Muss, I was still kind of in that player mentality. I was like, hey, if you were here 2 years ago, I'd still be playing, not coaching. That was the first thing I ever said to him. I think that like confidence. He's like, oh, I like this kid. So I did my warm-up. That team was stacked. Like, legendary team, Jeremy Lin, Bobby Simmons, Courtney Fortson, Donald Sloan. Almost everybody made it back to the NBA off that team. I did warm-ups, and then Muss invited me back the next day, and they said, hey, come to pregame. And so then I go to pregame, and I'm helping Bobby Simmons, this NBA vet, get back to the NBA. And he's vibing with everything I'm doing, so he's giving me confidence. And then that was the same time when Jeremy got called back up to the Warriors. So Jeremy was out of there, and we met briefly, and that comes back around full circle later. But then Muss was like, hey, come to the playoffs, sit behind the bench. And so that's kind of how these stories start, right? It's like you're doing something out of your passion and opportunity. You're going to be able to rock the show or not. And this is Eric Musselman, who had already been an NBA head coach twice. And now he's the head coach at Arkansas, right? Tough coach to work with. That was my first pro experience versus college, where I'd been in that atmosphere.
Very cool.
And what I really got from that experience was, in a pro setting, it's not about the teacher like telling these guys what to do. When they step on the court, they're a pro. They're going to do what they're supposed to do, and what they believe they're confident at doing. And the coach just expects it. It's not he's not trying to police everybody. So that was my style right away. I was like, oh, I like this pro style. And that's why I kind of
in the trust.
The trust in everybody, and it's about money. At that time, we couldn't talk about money and finances with college athletes, so it was kind of taboo. But the NBA was clear, like, hey, bro, you want to work on this hip stuff and get paid? This is what we're going to do. And then the guys at that point, they appreciated the resources because they were so minimal there. So there was a really clean relationship. So that was my first team opportunity, and I think that kind of put me on the board to be able to get the next step.
Which was the Westchester Knicks then?
Which was the Reno Bighorns one more time. So, which is interesting. So the Reno Bighorns have been bought by the Sacramento Kings off of private ownership.
And that was kind of like
this was 2 years later.
That's a D before they came to G League.
This was kind of right in the tipping point of the D to G League branding change. This is why we talk about with the younger coaches to do the social media. I was blogging and doing stuff like that, and one of the assistant coaches for the Reno Bighorns told the head coach, oh, there's a guy in Reno, you need it. He's got his facility, I've watched his pre-draft work online, let's get him. So the Kings called me, was it Schaefer? He called me, Chip Schaefer called and did the interview with the Kings. And I basically hired on as a consultant for the Reno Bighorns. I didn't have to travel, and I told them I would do like 2 group workouts a week, and I would come to all the home games. But me being me, and I'm sure you're the same way, I said, Coach, whatever my contract says, that doesn't matter. I'm going to do as much as I can to help you and the team possible.
For sure.
So we had an out-of-shape point guard to start the season who was like 10, 15 pounds too heavy. And we were losing a lot of games, and Coach was like, bro, I need this guy in shape. And I said, all right. So I'd wake up early, I'd pick him up, bring him to the facility at 6 a.m. before my personal training clients that were paying me. And I work him out extra, and I encouraged him to work on his nutrition. He lost 10 pounds. We went on a 10-game winning streak.
Oh, my goodness.
That same coach credits me with making the playoffs. He gets a job opportunity in New York before the interview starts. He's like, hey, I got a coach for you. If you're going to need a new strength conditioning coach, here's like his name. And that was the Westchester Knicks and the New York Knicks. So that's how you get the phone call from Roger Hines of the New York Knicks in Reno, Nevada. You're like, wait, what? The New York Knicks?
It's crazy.
And at that moment in time, I didn't want to chase coaching jobs. I had a great personal training business. I have real estate stuff on the side that I was doing. but I knew Reno was too small, and I was like, you're never going to get this opportunity again. 100%. Like in Reno, you'll get 1 or 2 D1 athletes on the basketball side, maybe.
Right.
So I wasn't being able to reach that full potential and the challenges that we'll talk about. So when the Knicks called, I took the interview. I was fortunate to get the job opportunity, and I spent 7 years, and I started that franchise off. So I was like one of the few people to start the franchise and stick with them for over 7 years.
Which is crazy though, because I think like young strength coaches, and we were just talking about this actually because we had just a seminar, and it's like they don't realize the grind that's actually associated with being successful. Because it's not like a normal job where it's like, let's say we wanted to be accountants. It's like, all right, cool, I go get my CPA, I started this baseline salary. You can still punch in, punch out 9 to 5, and then like you'll make your way up on merit and if you're doing a good job. But it's here, it's like, nobody's telling you to wake up at 5 a.m. to do that, or to like drive other places, or all these little things that you're doing to meet people, get experiences, and that's like what led to those green lights, which was pretty sick.
That's well said. No, that's it. That's it. The hardest part is showing up.
Yeah.
For everybody. Yeah. For all of us, right? The athlete, the coach in the morning when it's cold as hell outside, and you got to go open the facility doors and put the heat on and wait for the people to get there. I mean, it's tough, but and those are sacrifices that, if you're going to work with others who sacrifice at a high level, for sure, you're going to relate to each 100%. Other, and that's going to bring out the best in each other.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Boyle who said like coaching is a calling. Like look at your story. It's just like you knew what was going on. You're writing your business plans, but like you didn't know it was going to materialize to this maybe. But you're like, I know what I want to do. The road might be different, but it's just like that passion and that calling I think took you a little bit. So you're in New York. Right. This is where kind of Chris comes in a little bit. Correct. So just explain kind of that initial.
Yeah. So both of us were working for the New York Knicks. Chris was in his second year. It was Phil Jackson's first year taking over. So when Phil hired me, he was the president of the Knicks. I didn't have much interaction with Phil at the time, but I did get some feedback from his people about how they would like strength conditioning. So at the time we had a draft pick, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, who was like a priority for the organization, obviously, and super athletic, great player. And so the first day in the building, I decided to go help out on his player development session, and Chris happened to be running the session as a player development coach. During the session, I didn't say anything to Chris. I just hustled and got rebounds, kind of like how it's been for a long time with our relationship. And noticed his coaching style and his attention to detail, and I really respected that off the top. He was younger, just like myself at the time, and watched Thanasis do some things, and using my eye for the weight room, there's some specifics that I noticed about Thanasis biomechanics and things, but I didn't say anything. And I think that's a big part of young coaches. Understanding when to give input, when to hold back and take that input in and save it. Especially when you're in an NBA organization. Oh my goodness. Especially when you're in the Knicks organization.
It's like, I know you just read that textbook, but dude, shut up right now.
Yeah. And then also being able to take the guy that read the textbook telling you what to do who has no practical application.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, both sides. Every side of it. So that relationship built off of being on the court and some trust, and then I came back the next day, rebound again, and then what was really cool about it is Chris gave me some advice on what Phil Jackson was looking for and how these guys are operating, and that gave me a head start. Because then what
was one of the things?
Yeah, so really cool thing that reminded me of that was everyone has to stay 15 feet apart in the triangle offense.
Okay.
And that's like the ideal space. So my warm up has always been unique and fun and entertaining, but I would keep them in 15 feet of space.
Yeah.
And I'd also try to get them to communicate the transitions together versus me calling out things. So they try to lead with each other. But he was big on the 15 feet of space. So when I did my warm-ups, I made sure I had 15 feet of space. So it was the pro lanes and the deep corners.
Yeah.
And then, so that was one thing that stuck to my mind
When he said that, though, were you like, does this really matter? Or were you
Yeah, you're kind of going, well, Zen Master wants 15 feet of space. And I think at the time we were all too caught up in the triangle details. But if you think about it naturally, that is the good spacing on the floor.
Yeah, of course.
It splits it up evenly.
Yeah,
so
but you're just whatever you want in your mind.
I'll do that.
This really has nothing
I'll
to
do that, but the key component to all that is I never didn't do what Mike Atkinson would do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I took that give him what he needs, but do not give up your power because it's on me, right?
Yeah,
like this season's on me.
That's why you're there.
I have to do my style because if I take any other input, it's on me, not them.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna look in my mirror and be like, bro, you did stuff against your soul. Like you know better. You shouldn't have done that. So that kind of started that. But that was a really interesting experience the first season for sure.
Yeah, and then you guys kind of get close a little bit.
Yeah, so we get a little closer off the court and on the court. He was with Westchester off and on doing player development with the guys that were drafted. And so he would sit next to me in games. And then he was really working his ass off because he would do both jobs. And I was watching that. You know, he'd make it to all our games in Westchester, back to the city, do player development. So I just gained a big respect for him on that side, and then he obviously saw my grind as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, we got closer because we're closer in age. We had a good friend of ours they're both connected to as well later on. And that relationship and trust just kind of kept building and building. What's unique about the Westchester job for me at the time was it was seasonal.
Okay.
And that's kind of how we...
Well, their season's shorter, right?
Yeah, so G League is the first team in, last team in, first team out, right, of all the seasons.
Yep.
So it allowed me to train in the off season privately.
Cool.
When I took the Knicks job, they gave it to me seasonally. So it was only 6 months, 7 months salary, housing, blah, blah, blah. So I would have to go make income. Like if you're a plumber, you're gonna go plumb, right? Like I'm a coach, I need to coach people. Yeah. So my first 2 off seasons, when Chris was still with the Knicks full time, I'd go to Vegas and I worked at Athletic Gains.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of Athletic Games. Yep.
So Travell opened a facility in Vegas, and I kind of was doing both of our jobs, Chris and I's jobs. So I would do player development and strength conditioning, had a lot of high-end guys in and out. Yeah. One thing I noticed about Vegas was that the morning workouts usually got wiped out, I'm sure. And routines kind of just got thrown out the window. That was a little frustrating for me because I would go there, build up a base, and then I'd go back to Westchester, and I'd come back to Vegas this second year, and it was all gone again. So it was hard for me to build a business in the off season. At that moment in time, I was interviewing with NBA teams. Okay. Some of the feedback was my hair was too long, which is funny. Yeah. You know, Chris and I both kind of got that a lot within the NBA buildings. He would cover up his tats. Yep. But when I took my job interview, the best advice I got was to be myself, and that was one of the things. So the Vegas offseason, got some job interviews, nothing panned out. That was better than my job. With Westchester, I feel like I had one of the best jobs you could ever get as a strength coach. For sure. Full autonomy, NBA facility. Yep. They paid me very well, very respectable. I got to be on the front of the bench. I'm an active participant in the games and coaching because of my background and my relationship with the coaches. Yeah. So it was a great experience, like a really, really good learning lesson. And I think it built the foundation of like what this is. So Chris then, he's like, all right, I'm gonna go do my thing. What happens next? Yeah, so Chris decides he's gonna go do his thing, and I'm frustrated with Vegas. So I look at him and say, hey, I'll stay in New York. Yeah. Let's do this. And you know, New York's expensive in the summers, and 100%. You know, I'm a strength coach salary at the time, so it's one of those things where I'm gonna sacrifice probably some income right now and take a little bit of a risk, but I need to stay close to Chris, and we're gonna do whatever it takes. Right. And so that was Melo's Hoodie Melo. Yep. You know, and so Chris and I look at each other, we were like, all right, let's train. Staying in the summer, we got Melo going in training, and then one thing just led to another. JR's coming, and then CJ lived in the building at the time. Ennis Canner was in New York. Cool. And so there was like a core group of guys to kind of start with that needed our... And they were all in the Knicks at that time, too. No, they weren't. So that's right. Yeah, they weren't. But JR was with Cleveland. That's what it was, 2000. And Melo was with Knicks. Yeah, this is a long time ago. Yeah. Ennis was with OKC, and CJ was with Portland. Okay. But CJ had family that was doing things in New York, so he happened to be living here. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. Yeah, just like another green light. Yeah, it was just one of those things where like Chris had these guys, they needed help. I was doing rebounding for Chris and stretching the guys. Like if you look at the first summer, I literally shrank as a person. I couldn't lose the weight, I finally lost the weight again. I was like, damn, I needed that. So that's kind of how it started, and really the background working for Westchester gave me a lot of confidence to support the high-end NBA guys. Yeah, and I could relate, like we talked about, being a basketball guy, and then just Chris and I's rapport, working for the Knicks, like being able to communicate under that environment. Yeah. Helps us communicate in this environment as well. So that was the first summer. It was a challenge for me on the business side because as our profile grew, I was getting pressure internally from the organization, to like be careful. Yeah, and like make a decision. Yeah, it was going to get to those points eventually. Yeah. Somehow I managed to balance it out for as long as I could. Yep. I never crossed the line and kept it professional on both sides. Pro, so. Yeah, and honestly, it wasn't like anyone was asking me, like, what's this guy doing in the off season? Yeah. Like, they should have been maybe, but they didn't. So there's never a conflict of interest. Right. It was just giving me more experience. I wanted that NBA experience, but I didn't get the output that I wanted. And so I created it myself with Chris. You know, we basically created this out of necessity for ourselves.
100%. So leading into that, just talking business, not like, you know, we don't have to get into it, but it's like, at what point did it actually become a business? Versus like, all right, these dudes have relationships, they're super good at what they do, but it's like, yo, like we could make this a business. Let's do this.
I would say the moment we got to Summit and officially got our own space. I think, and having Alex Koblenz jump in and help us on the managing side, and just kind of, because at that moment in time, the first 2 summers, it was, I compared it to like an album. Like, I know it seems like everyone does training now and everyone does social media and everyone takes pictures in their gym. But at that moment in time, everyone was pointing the finger at us and saying, don't post on social. Oh, these guys is doing this and this. So we were taking that feedback and having a challenge against that. We were doing a lot of things that were just not necessarily at that time.
But like just because you're on social and like just because you're doing things, it's like that doesn't mean it's a business. You know what I mean? Like you could have like 1 million followers.
That's
on
what
social
I'm getting
media.
at. Yeah. So we did not capitalize.
That's what I'm saying.
So as we're building this album, the world's watching it, and they're trying to reach out to us and like grab you and hey, come down here, Chris or Mike. I got a guy I want you to meet. And we're in the moment of just trying to train guys. And running here and there, like, sure, text me later, get to me. There's no organization in that moment in time, so there was no business. So like I said, once we got that home base, that kind of anchored us in where we could have creative expression and our own home to like bring you in, bring guests in, and have control of our environment. That's when I feel like it really turned into a business and grounded us.
Cool. And I mean, you know, we are the business of strength, so I don't need to, like, not details, but it's like, what is, so I asked you, like, Black Ops basketball, that's like culture, it's a movement, but what is the business of, like, Mike Atkinson?
So Mike Atkinson's business currently, you know, I have endorsement deals with certain brands, you know, social media, you know, you get some payment off of those. And then I have a lot of private clients, you know, the NBA clients. There's different ways business gets worked out. I have private clients, high school, younger athletes, all based on referral. There's no marketing. You know, it's strictly referral in the city. I choose my clients, you know, try to base it on like who's a good fit for me and also who can afford it.
For sure.
You know, there's two things that are basically that, you know, when you get to this level, you want to be a little bit more strict on who you take into the building.
Where do you see yourself kind of going though? Like, because you have such a good clientele, you could capitalize on so many things, but like, what does your business look like probably going in like 5 years?
We have different sports we're working with, rugby and football, so that's going to expand.
That's sick,
just that's a side product. That's something I believe in and use, but it's also something that you can capitalize with social media because if it's on your social, people are getting exposure to it. So that's one thing I'm expanding. I think helping more organizations like such as yourself on a consulting level, but differently, more on the cultural side. I've been studying, I haven't publicly said this yet, but I've been studying NLP.
Cool.
So I'm going to be an NLP practitioner.
Nice.
I'm working on that. My mom's a PhD in NLP, and she has 2 masters in psychology and PE. So like I'm taking that education of growing up with her and I'm formalizing that as well. So I see myself doing more of the mental application because I think you and I both can agree. The more we work with the body, we know the limiting factor is this mind and our belief systems and those things. So I've been studying that. I think high level business stuff is coming really soon.
100%.
You know, my network is expanding, and I think people are really inspired by what Chris and I have done here.
Oh my God!
On different levels too. You know, I think Chris and I have different profiles, and we carry ourselves in different ways, and that's what makes us unique, and we balance it out, kind of like a yin and a yang. So I think I won't be with an NBA team. I don't visualize wanting to be back on the road and traveling, but I do see myself impacting larger organizations culturally, spiritually, and physically.
For sure. I mean, when I think New York City basketball, and I'm sure everybody can attest to it, it's like I think Chris Brickley and Mike Atkinson.
That's very humbling.
No, it's true because it's like you see on social, like they're doing these things, like they're building this culture, and everybody watched like how that progressed up until where it is now. So if you were to say, if one of them or like any coach was to ask you like, all right, Mike, I want to do what you do. I want to train NBA players and work at a high level. We know that that's not necessarily reality for everybody. So like, what's your advice for someone who wants to be in this space?
So my advice always is put the player first. Put the player first, put the player first, put the player first. We're nothing, you can't do anything without the athlete, and also it's for them. And so if you can put it in that light, that's the first step. Service mentality, How can I help? You know, I'm sure you get a lot of DMs. Yep. Hey, I want to come to your gym and train with the NBA guys or work under you and work with NBA guys. Wrong approach.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. How about, hey, Mike, how can I help you so much?
Yeah,
I really love what you do and admire it, but I want to just help you. And I think that's what I've done in my career. Aubrey.
Yeah, lead with value.
Yeah, Aubrey needed a rebounder. I didn't know it at the time, but now I know now. It sucks to rebound your own drills.
Yeah.
Okay? So get a young guy to help you.
Right.
Get a young guy to pad him up.
Right.
So I helped with Aubrey. I helped with Chris. Ask for nothing. The longer you can ask for nothing and just keep bringing service and bringing value, the better you're going to be. So if you can do that, I haven't asked for a thing in our relationship with any of our guys.
That's crazy.
You know, there's a value exchange, energy exchange. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a favor, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But there's always an exchange of energy.
Yeah, I think that gets lost because now, even talking about social, people try to like skip steps. It's like, you said it off camera, I'll say it, but like you're 40 years old.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I'm 23, like I got to do this at 25, 26, 27. It's like, no, dude, you got to put in the work and lead with value.
Build your reps. Yeah, this isn't like we're not the athletes, right? Like as a coach, your wisdom should be increasing.
Yeah, of
we
course.
can't understand and get all those reps because like each athlete is unique. A G League point guard versus Joel Embiid is a unique profile.
100%.
And I'm going to need skill sets for both of those and meet in both positions. Yeah, so you can't skip steps because the minute you skip the step, the client's going to know you skipped the step. And you're going to have the record's going to scratch.
Oh my goodness.
And that's the worst feeling.
Oh.
And that's one thing that I always look for in our environment. Chris and I keep this thing moving.
Yeah.
There's no scratch the record. You don't look like you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're in control and confident in your environment, just like the athletes are in theirs.
Yeah, 100%.
And they feed off of that.
And you know, if someone comes, you said it before, but like if someone comes across like, hey man, can you do me this favor? You're like, dude, you know what I mean? You have no idea what I did to get here. Like, ask the right question. It's like, how can I learn from you more? Or like, hey man, I want to tell your story. How could we do something like this? You know, it's just, I don't think people think like that anymore. I think it's just me.
It can be that way, and I think the social can like you say, can change that perspective
100%.
and think, because they, like we talked about off camera as well, strength coach for 9 years in the NBA G League.
Yeah.
Try living in the G League for 9 years, let alone coaching in it, let alone playing in it.
Yeah.
So it's a huge challenge, but I didn't post everyday sessions online. That's in the facility. That's what the organization pays me to do. That's my job.
Yeah.
Outside the organization, you're going to see the fun stuff on Instagram. You're going to see more sports-specific things. But daily, it's a nice fundamental strength program to keep people healthy, keep them feeling good. Like G League, the whole point is if you feel good, you're going to play better. You know, that's the whole season. It's up and down. Let's just keep you at a high baseline level as far as possible.
I think even that is like you're saying, like be present.
Yeah.
You know, just instead of like, damn, I'm at the G League again. I can't wait till I get to the Knicks. It's like, dude, if you don't even do your job here, you'll never get to the Knicks.
Well, I always looked at it with the grandma or with the MVP. I'm looking at each rep as an opportunity for me to get better too. And if I don't want to get better in that moment, I'm just taking the money for my time.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's not
a good way
life.
to look at it.
That's not life, and that's not how I got better as a basketball player.
100%.
We want our athlete to be in every rep, intent, mindful, present, like you said. And if we're not doing that, I'm just looking at the clock, like, yo, I want to get out the facility. The only time I ever did that in the facility is when the coaches alienated me as a strength coach, and I got on the bike and said, I'll watch you guys do this stuff.
Yeah, and that's different.
And that's different. That's different. But when I'm strength and conditioning and you're in the moment as a coach, no matter who's in front of you, the most respect you can give them is to treat them like everyone else and be in that moment.
100%.
And that's you know, I talk about my celebrity clients. It's the same thing. I tell them off the jump, I'm going to treat you the same way I treat everyone else. I'm going to coach you.
Yeah.
Period.
And they probably enjoy that more.
Hell yeah.
They're like,
who doesn't want a good coach?
Yeah.
We all like to be coached. I like to be coached.
100%.
I wish I got coached more.
Yeah.
It feels good.
100%. Talking training though.
Yeah.
Right? I said this before and I was joking, but it's like, dude, this guy's using a ball attachment. That's garbage. Context is super important. Yeah. So you said you came to your training ideology just like, you know, sports specific, moving, basketball, stuff like that. But taking it a step further, when looking, you were in the G League. So let's take it for guys who are still in that rank. Like, what's the number one goal? How are you building out a basketball program over the course of a season?
Yeah, so I think the unique challenge of the G League is it's the last one in. So you have to assume most of their peers are gone overseas. You have to assume that they're not in the highest form of shape because the pickups run dry a little bit. They're going to have to really keep themselves going. So training camp was the first part of that piece of that puzzle.
Yep.
And getting the volume and the load up, and also helping them with some of their deficiencies. One of our guys, like a rookie, would come in 15 pounds overweight, or a vet would be overseas and he wasn't eating and he's down 20 pounds. But they both know in their intuition that they need these things.
Right.
How can I create a relationship and give them those things
Yep.
in the competitive cycle? So training camp, which is a good thing for strength coaches to hear, is in a G League training camp, an NBA training camp, some of these guys are trying to make the team. And so I definitely would always give them their own space. I didn't want anyone to feel like the strength coach took it out of them before tryout. So those first 10 days, I'm watching guys' habits. Now, if they're a Knicks guy and I know they're with us, and I'm on them a little sooner, but I'm mostly watching guys the way they work, the way they walk into the gym. Do they come right into the weight room right after they get to the facility? What's their natural habits? I'm taking notes of those. Then we're going to get into the technical side. So we do movement screens, all the biomechanical measurements, body comp.
Okay.
Based on the athlete, we would use force plates. I do stuff on the court, single leg jumps, rim attacks. I'll take it from a technical standpoint, tactical, physical, and mental, the quadrant, things like that. So the volume, and then you're balancing the load, and we would use, all the data tools, catapult.
But you don't have something like, that's a perfect example. You don't have something that's mapped out. It's like, hey, you're going to come in. This is what 12 weeks looks like. Obviously.
I wish.
Because these guys are just
I think that's one of the gifts and the curse.
Yeah.
I think it's not periodized like a college setting would be.
Right.
This is straight roll the dice every day.
Yeah.
And also you're balancing out basketball coaches.
Yeah.
And you're right into the court.
Okay.
So you have to be able to work within the constraints of the practice time, volume. Like my first coach with the Knicks would do 3-hour practices. And
what are you doing?
It was like he would, the clock runs during a practice, and he would stop it when he would talk.
Yeah.
And so he's like, it's a 2-hour practice. No, it's 3 hours, coach. So what do I have to do to balance that out on the strength side?
Right.
Maybe I'm taking more out of the guys early and saying, I don't care about that last hour. Y'all shut that shit down. Yeah, it's fine. But we're working on those kind of things. Most of it was 20 to 40 minutes of strength work, and some corrective stuff, or some mobility, or things like that. And then they would go to the training room and get their training in, like if they needed something specific.
Yep.
Small doses. I can tell you that everyone who got called up was always first or second in the weight room with me, even if they weren't a worker. But their mind knew that they had to show their habits.
Yeah,
and I would support that.
Because they're playing for some bigger.
Yeah, so that was one thing I would notice. I told them yesterday that we would have, one of my styles is it's me and 12 players. So there's only one strength coach with 12 pro athletes.
Right.
We would kind of bring them in waves. There's like 1 bus, 2 bus, and then some guys would have cars. So on the board, I'd put up a macro workout, which is we're all on the same bus, we're all on the same van, we're all on the same airplanes, we all practice the same usually.
Yep.
So that'd be kind of the macro influence, and if they didn't want to talk to me that day, they're frustrated, or they came in late and I'm with another guy, they go to the board and I can monitor their positioning and stuff, but they can just work off that, put their headphones in even.
That's super interesting.
It's different.
Yeah.
But then I'd have micro or specific individualized things that we're working on.
Right.
And so off that board, I may say for a guy that played 40 minutes the night, 1 round of everything, or just do the mobility and then do your specifics.
Right.
And so you're building in the specifics because you got to coach on the fly a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. So those fundamentals in the program, a lot of complexes, a lot of bang for your buck, just like trying to get the nervous system back engaged, and then the proper load. Timing the load was always the challenge, especially when you drift on the road a little bit.
Right, like aligning your intensities with your output a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, like should we do a heavy squat today? Because sometimes these guys will respond well.
Right.
But then 3 days later, they're going to be tired more.
Right.
Like, do I want them to peak for this game, or do we want them to kind of, because the longer you do this, you realize you can kind of neurally get some of these guys firing. 100%. But there's only so many times you can do that before the tank's empty.
100%. Going back to what you said, because I don't think people know, like that's how extensive it is, like biomechanics, in bodies, force plates. With a basketball player, what are some of the, I don't want to call them ailments, but what are some of like the things that you see with assessments? So like a guy comes in, are you doing a table assessment, or is it like, does he lack internal rotation? So like what's a quick process that you look for that you could fix like right there?
Yeah, I think the hips and the feet are something we can look at in so many different ways and analyze. For a long time, the movement screen was enough for me, just the FMS, and then natural film. Watching on court and their natural tendencies is a big part of what I like to look at. Lately in the gym, for using what we have, and we're just talking about being in your space, I use the sand dune a lot because it shows me where they're putting pressure. And then when if you just have someone march in place, you'll see they have a tight internal rotation on their hip, or, you know, they're winging out, externally rotated. So we do those kind of things. What I see on the court a lot is like asymmetrical issues with the way people jump, the way they load.
In what instance?
Attacking the rim, like right leg layup.
Like a deficiency.
Like a right leg jump versus a left leg power output. Yeah. And then you can read that into if you want to take that to the weight room, you can find that. Right. If you want to take it into the screening,
you could do like a
you'll find it all the different ways. A lot of the times I would take their film and look at makes and misses. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as a basketball mind, I couldn't get away from that.
So what do you mean? Like that's
like
cool.
Their biomechanics, their body positioning. Like if I have a quad dominant guy and that he shoots short, I'm noticing that his hips are probably not back enough, right?
And
so if he gets his hips back a little bit,
posterior chain is
he's a little bit shut off. You know, he's not under the ball as well as he could be. And even though he's quad dominant, he still needs to use that anterior hip a little bit, right? Maybe not as much as I want, but for him, that's a lot, right?
100%.
So just those little cues you'll pick up. And then you're noticing the player's tendencies, or like the athlete I talked about earlier, he had limited shoulder mobility, and the coach wants him to hold his follow through, and the guy can only do this because of actual physical issue. Like, we got to work on the shoulder mobility and keeping his ribs down and doing all that work, the pelvic floor work. So we may need to bring that back. So that's another way to do it on the fly, and then they're gaining relationships with the basketball player.
Because you're solving the problems, right?
You're helping him in his environment. The more we can meet them in this environment, the more buy-in you're going to get. It's not about the ball. I know everyone's like, oh, Mike does a thing with the ball in the hand, and it's like, or puts resistance on a movement. That is engaging. It also gets the movement more natural for the athlete, because that's what they like. It puts them in the moment. And I've noticed that just gives me the results I like. But I don't need a ball. No. We could use a piece of a water bottle.
Yeah, but that's so important. Like you just said, your psychology. Talk about the psychology of that for buy-in, like creating an environment. Because like stress, everybody knows is like stress is processed the same way, whether it's, you know, physical or mental. It's like your body's still going to react. So if you're doing those things, it's an immediate like diffusing of a situation.
Yeah, you're bringing yourself in. Like, I think one of the safest places I've ever felt is the basketball court. Yeah. So I call that a resource state. And we want to anchor those resource states. This is the NLP side of me. You anchor that resource state, and that should be in your warm-up. So the minute you go into your warm-up, oh, that's my shit. Yeah, I feel good. And so I would watch our pregame, and I'm a basketball guy. I want the ball in my hand as much as possible pregame. My hands are cold. I'm nervous. I want the ball. I want to feel the ball. So I said, hey, let's put the ball in the guy's hands. The other team strength coach looking at me going like, what's this guy doing dribbling? Right. Why is he dribbling? Yeah. He doesn't know I play basketball, I'm all state and all this shit. I'm not, like, my lens, you're not going to get that out of me.
Of course.
But you're going to see the same quality movement. And at that time, I was one of the first guys doing mini band work on the sideline. And then putting a ball in their hand. And as long as the movement quality didn't change, I saw lights turning on. I saw full sweats versus dry sweats. I saw the other team looking at us. That shit's dope.
Right.
And I want to warm up.
And what's cool too as strength coaches is like there's science behind it. Like you're talking about the psychology of science. It's not just like he's looking over and he's like, dude, that's what's happening over there. Like, oh, that's cool, I'm gonna take that. It's like, no, this is why we actually do it.
Yeah, so high knees, skips, all the movement qualities with the ball are all things that I found so beneficial, because basketball players have horrible movement qualities, horrible movement profiles. But the minute you start telling them how applicable those movements are and when they do them, they start understanding. And we got such good results with all the athletes from the warm-up, just specifically. Like, if I could just give people one piece of advice, that mini band work, you know, for injury reduction, but the proper form. Right. And the reason why, the science we're talking about it, you know, it's live, it's that hip positioning and working on getting guys back to neutral, not staying anterior hip tilt and all these position angles things, so that it is super detailed. And then I learned that I need to let go a little bit too, right? And so it's like, how can I keep that quality, but still get these guys almost using each other now? Right. So that all evolved into this full expression. And I think the more we master something, we both know like it can be ugly.
100%.
Because I'm in control here, but I'm letting the development happen naturally, and that's when you're getting the best.
And those guys, and you know better than anybody, those guys need habit and flow. Like they need like rhythm, they need reference points. It's like if something's off, it's like, I mean, they like, if they don't have the same socks on, before the game, it's like, dude, I don't feel in my rhythm. So it's like our job is to like put them in rhythm, if you will.
Click it back in every time. And there's so many different ways to do that. And in a warm up, sometimes it'd be hitting a guy.
Yeah.
Like, yo, let's go. Like, wake him up. Like, he's holding the band work. You hit the ball. He's like, yeah, let's go. I was telling them something I do with the players here that I carried from the Westchester team days is after each warm up with the group or the individual, I keep the mini band on and they got to shoot a shot. And if they make, during a season, if they make 4, I'll take them out to breakfast. But if they make it, I do some crazy shots here.
Yeah.
I'll buy steak dinner for everyone in the gym. Everyone in the gym. So I've had anyone who comes in here, does a warm up, they get to shoot with a mini band on, some challenge.
For sure.
Paolo's made it, Kevin Love's made it. Kevin Love's made it a few times. I think there's no shot in the gym Kevin Love can't make, to be honest. But those are the cultural things that you start adding.
Right.
But you're watching the other teams, and they're looking rigid. They're looking like science, sports science. Like, I had a kind of a theory too. We do our facilitative stuff on the baseline, but I never let my guys' hands touch the floor when we're on our feet.
Interesting.
The minute we're back in that mode of active competition, we don't do quadruped, bird dog. No, we're getting ready to fight. Now, we can do that stuff. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
But not here, not at half court where we ball.
Right.
Like, that's not lay down time. Now, that's a cultural thing in the NBA. They like to stretch each other and stuff.
Yep.
I prefer not to do that as a coach, but that was just my culture.
100%. Yeah. But that's what drives community and community.
Yeah, and in buy-in, like Mike stands for something.
Yes.
Like, once his suit's on, he's not laying on the ground stretching me.
Yep.
Because he already knows I'm lit.
100%.
Like, I'm fully lit.
That's cool.
Yeah, so you build those boundaries too, and then the guys feed off that.
Yeah.
Mike's his own person. Like, oh yeah, he's got a philosophy. Like, there's a reason he does this shit. And then they started taking pride in our warm-up and the way we did things and going, Mike, you see that? They're doing butt kickers.
Yeah.
You don't do butt kickers. I'm like, yeah, I don't do butt kickers. You know why?
Right.
Right.
It's cool. I'm sure when you're watching games and stuff and you see these guys warming up, you're like, yeah, that's our shit. Yeah, we do that. And like,
well, I think the only part that voice comes in is when I know guys specifically were negatively talking about me and the way I did things, and now they're applying them.
Yep.
Or they unfollowed me on Instagram, like liking my stuff in Reno, Nevada when I was nobody.
Goodness, right.
And then now they're using my stuff, and they know. It's okay, and it doesn't matter. Like, I was on private for a long time because I felt like people were just going to poach some of my stuff, and I wasn't ready to share it at that 100%. Moment in time. And it was something different and unique. And now I feel like I have the platform where it's cool to express it. There's minimal context on there, but for the people that do know me and work with me closely, there's huge value.
100%.
And I know it's inspiring regardless, and at the very least it's entertaining, and it is fundamental. Yeah. I have a philosophy that's very fundamental, and it connects everything. I love when someone questions me. I'm just not going to respond on Instagram for free.
Yeah, of course.
Like, sorry.
Yeah,
you want that information. There's a reason why we're here. There's a reason why Chris is one of the best player development coaches in the world. Yeah, and I spend every day with him. I'm soaking in that knowledge too, and we're feeding off each other. So we're getting better.
So if you were to, so just go with that.
Yeah.
Mike Atkinson's philosophy, what are the core 3 tenets or 5 tenets?
That there's no difference between the weight room and the basketball court. Your movement is your movement.
So movement is movement.
Movement is movement, I would say, is a core philosophy.
I would say, I don't want to I would say community and psychology is number 1. It's just the guys how they buy in and how they do those things. And we see it too. It's just we talk about it, even being in a private sector gym. If someone comes in, it's half the time they might not even care who you work with. It's oh, I've worked with these 3 people. They're I don't give a shit. I'm Johnny. I'm a junior in high school. I want you to help me.
Yeah, I'm not here to tell people my resume ever. That's definitely not the attitude I would want them. I want them to know that they're going to be treated the same way that LeBron got treated when he was in this gym, that I'm intense, I'm very consistent. I remember one of my players always telling me, Mike, you piss me off. You're so consistent. I'm very positive, I'm energetic, I love this, but when it's time to get off the court and relax, I'm down.
Yeah, of course.
You got to balance it out.
Of course.
But this energy is, you're a giver. This is how I was as a player. I could play the whole game. I got a lot of rebound, average a triple-double. I have energy.
Yeah.
I have good energy, and I see a lot of things.
So psychology.
That perception, the ability to meet people at where they are,
100%.
and give them space to be themselves, because I think I value that as well.
Yeah.
And then just the fundamental strength and fundamental basketball, honestly. Just knowing that there are certain fundamentals that are transferable through both, and that have lasted time. And there's also a lot of fake fundamentals out there that we can display the myths a little bit.